Today's lesson will be on number systems. There are 7 types of number systems. The first type are the natural numbers. These numbers also go by the name of counting numbers. The counting numbers are the numbers used to count with. They start with 1, they go on to 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. They do not include fractions because you usually do not use fractions or decimals to count with. These 3 dots after the number mean that they continue forever in that direction. The next group of numbers are the whole numbers. Whole numbers also do not contain any fractions or decimals. The whole numbers are all the natural numbers, including 0. The next group of numbers are the integers. Integers do not contain any fractions or decimals, regardless positive or negative. The integers are all the whole numbers and the positive numbers counterparts. 0 does not have a counterpart because it is neither negative or positive. The negative numbers counterparts and the additive numbers counterparts are called the additive inverses because they undo the positive. So let's say you have 1 and then you add a negative 1 to it. You get 0 because it's subtracting 1 in a way. You'll learn more about this later when you study adding positive and negative numbers. The next group of numbers are the the rational numbers. The rational numbers are all the groups that we have talked about, including fractions, and all the decimals that end or repeat. Note that I have not written whole numbers or natural numbers because the integers contain the whole numbers and the whole numbers contain the natural numbers. Just because the integers contain the whole numbers doesn't mean the integers are the whole numbers because they also contain extra numbers. The fifth group of numbers are the irrational numbers. The irrational numbers are the opposite of the rational numbers. The name suggests this because it begins with the prefix ir, which is the opposite of rational. The irrational numbers are all the decimals Do not repeat and do not end. Some famous examples of this would be pi and the square root of 2. Irrational and rational numbers also have the word radio in them. A radio is a comparison between two numbers. A radio can also be written as fractions, so a definition of rational numbers could be all the numbers that can be viewed as fractions. Irrational numbers being the opposite would be all numbers that can't. I used a number sign to save space. The second to last group of numbers are the real numbers. The real numbers are all the numbers that you can think of. These include the irrational numbers, and the real numbers. I do not say integers again because rational numbers contain integers and integers contain whole numbers and whole numbers contain natural numbers. The last group of numbers are a very confusing group of numbers. These are the imaginary numbers. It doesn't make sense because, well, how can a number be imaginary? Because it doesn't exist, but a number is a number. How can it not exist? If you ever read an algebra textbook, you might have come with two things that might be an imaginary number. These would be undefined and the square root of negative numbers. The square root of a negative number cannot be determined because a negative times a negative would equal a positive, and a positive times a positive would equal a negative. And since the square has to be the same number, and positive and negative which equals a negative can't vary because they're not the same number, there is no answer to it, which would lead it to be imaginary. Because since everything has an answer. Well, undefined may seem like imaginary, it really isn't. One of the common reasons you can get undefined is when you do division by 0. But it's not, because undefined still has an answer, but even though it's not possible, it would still be a real number. Because even though division by 0 can't happen, That's just the operation, not the answer. Whereas the answer can't happen for the imaginary numbers. It doesn't make sense at first, but it will later. Those are the number systems, and those are everything you'll need to know about them forever. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.